Hello everybody, this is Gregory with 5-Minute Catholic Apologetics and Living, where 5 minutes of your time may get you to the divine. Today we're going to talk about when Mary went away in the spirit of Vatican II and how she came back. Now before we begin, let's start with a prayer. In nomine Patris et Filii et Spiritui Sancti, Amen. Gloria Patri et Filio et Spiritui Sancto, secutor in principio et nunc et semper, et in saecula saeculorum. Amen. So of course, did Mary ever really go away? No. What I'm talking about is devotion to her. So if we were to go back in time, even really to the 1920s, devotion to our Blessed Mother was strong. Now, for you Protestants, to be very clear, and we have several videos here on the four Marian dogmas, we do not worship her as a goddess. We venerate her because she is the Theotokos, the Mother of God. And as such, she deserves to be honored. We honor her. You will never find a piece of official Catholic literature, like in the Catechism or anything, that says that we worship her as a goddess. Protestants will misunderstand how we kneel in front of a statue of Mary and call that idolatry. It's not idolatry. We're just honoring Mary, and that's a visual representation of her. Just like if you look at a picture of your dead grandmother, it's a visual representation. Or if you look at a stained glass image of Jesus, it reminds you of him, but you're not worshiping the stained glass. Either way, so we look at the early church. The early church definitely had a devotion to our Blessed Mother, both the East and the West. And aside from the Protestants, or regardless of the Protestants, the Orthodox and our Eastern brothers and sisters, I've always had a great devotion to Mary. And then if you look in the West, really it was starting in the 50s and 60s with the spirit of Vatican II. And really in the 1950s, you just saw a lot of the rumblings before the actual Second Vatican Council began in 1962. But certainly in the 60s and 70s, you saw this diminution of Mary. And one of the reasons they did this is because in the spirit of ecumenism. Now, I would say it was false ecumenism, because true ecumenism is the Catholic Church is the one true church. You guys need to come to us. False ecumenism is, I would say, a form of indifferentism. Well, all spokes are the same wheel, they all go to God. And so you saw in the spirit of false ecumenism that really came after Vatican II, in the spirit of Vatican II, and sadly seen in, probably most epitomized by John Paul II's Assisi conferences, where you see him kissing the Quran and how he brought in people of different faiths, not even just Christian faiths, but all faiths. And you saw this kind of indifferentism pushed. But the idea was we should de-emphasize Mary as a way to bring more Protestants into the faith. And as you've seen time and time again, anytime you water down an aspect of your faith, you ain't attracting anybody. And you can see that with probably most palpably with the Protestant mainstream denominations. So you've seen the last 40 years, but really go back to the 1920s, because this is where fundamentalism and eventually evangelical Protestantism came out of, because they even felt in the 1920s and 30s that the Methodists, the Episcopalians were getting too liberal. But you've seen certainly in the last 50 years how these churches have embraced the spirit of the times, the secular spirit of the times, where they have female clergy, openly homosexual or lesbian clergy, how they embrace transgenderism, all these things, as a way to be like, look, we're with the times. No one is attracted to that. What are people attracted to? Timeless teachings. Timeless teachings. So you could have predicted this. No one really is going to be attracted to a watered down faith, because they know on some level that you're watering down the faith. Now, if you look at Annibale Buonini, the architect of the Novus Ordo Mass, he's on record saying that he wanted to have a Mass that was more approachable to Protestants. Now, did he knowingly know that this would not bring a lot of Protestants in? Or did he have this earnest belief that having a Mass that was similar to Archbishop Kramer's Mass of the 1550s in England, that it was going to bring in more people? Either way, it didn't work. So with Mary, you saw Mary de-emphasized in the 60s, 70s, 80s, for sure. If you went to the typical Catholic parish, you didn't see a lot of rosaries being done. Now, granted, some of you were in pockets where Marian devotion, whether in the form of the rosary or the memorare, or even just having a statue of Mary, was quite vibrant. But the typical Our Lady of Suburbia parish, it kind of went away. It kind of went away because we didn't want to offend the Protestants. by having Mary around. Instead of just doing good apologetics and explaining, she's the mother of God, she's the Ark of the Covenant, the new Eve, this is why we honor her. It was like, let's just push her under the table. Nobody puts baby in a corner like from Dirty Dancing. We were putting Mary in a corner. But what happened? What changed? Well, I think there's a couple of factors. I think one is, as much as we decry the Assisi conference that JP2 did, he did bring back Marian devotion. And some of this you could say would be ascribed to his assassination attempt, in that he was assassinated, or the attempt was on Our Lady of Fatima Day. And so he had a very strong attachment to Our Lady of Fatima. The bullet that struck him, he actually put in the crown later on of the Fatima statue, the one that's in Fatima. And anytime he would travel to a country, he would dedicate that country to Our Lady. So his devotion in his long pontificate, 27 years, I think really did help usher it back. And then what you saw, like we talked about in the spirit of Vatican II generation is dying, how I really think that we've endured the worst of the abuses of the spirit of Vatican II. And so the last 10, 15 years, you are seeing a return of Mary. And I hazard to say that Medjugorje has helped, because Medjugorje is a whole other can of worms. And we have an episode here on whether or not Medjugorje is worthy of visiting. And the Vatican has some new news about that, but we're not going to spend too much time on that. But Medjugorje really started in the 80s, but really the seers started to visit America in the 90s and pushing that in the different parishes. And that did lead to a lot of people visiting over in former Yugoslavia to the site. But I really think it was JP2, and then the oscillating of the pendulum swinging back to traditionalism. And I think you really now see Marianism, for lack of a better word, Marianism, but Marian devotion, veneration of Mary, really coming back strong. And I think this is good. But I think what it is people need to have an understanding. What's Mary's role in salvation history? And people who don't understand it will automatically jump to the wrong conclusions about our Blessed Mother. For example, we are idolaters and we worship her as a goddess, none of which is true. But having Marian devotions in your life, I think, is good. I think it benefits us. The Rosary, we've had that for 800 years. You think of the scapulars, you think again of memorare prayers, the Salve Regina, all the Marian hymns. In its proper context, having a relationship to Mary and praying to her for her intercession. Because you remember, what's the last thing she says in the New Testament? Do what he tells you, as she says in the wedding of Cana. So Jesus listens to Mary's intercession. So we should definitely incorporate Mary into our prayer life. And of course, she is not a God. She's not part of the Trinity. That kind of worship, the latria, is only reserved for the Trinity. She is hyperdulia. She is worthy of veneration. So in closing, as the spirit of Vatican II got to its head, we didn't want to offend. And then we eventually realized, because smarter heads prevailed, that we shouldn't be diluting the faith. Though you still see it many times, diluting the faith. But as a whole, now that generation is dying off, you're going to see a proper place of Mary in the Catholic world, Catholic theology. Guys, post in the comments. I'd love to hear from you. Until next time, take care. God bless. I pray.